Turning back to the U.S., are we starting to see the real impact of the shale energy boom on the economy? Joining us from UBS is Drew Madison. Drew, last year you said that economic growth should rise by about 0.5% over a 5-year period beginning really in the middle of this decade. So that would be, basically next year and the year after. Are we starting to finally see that?
We are. We're already starting to see it in terms of the terms of trade. So we're importing less and we're actually exporting more energy products. What we're missing still is kind of the investment cycle, but that has a lot to do with pricing. So we expect we'll see that later, but at least for now, we're kind of got an early jump start in terms of the positive effect on the U.S. economy from the shale boom.
So how much are we not having to spend in terms of tens, maybe even hundreds of billions of dollars that we would normally buy foreign oil with? What are we doing in terms of the savings from this?
Well, there's never savings when you talk about the U.S. consumer, right? So they're spending on other things. But,
no, but
of
savings
course,
in terms of what we don't have to spend on foreign oil because we're producing so much ourselves.
Oh, it's tens of billions of dollars at this point, and it's translating to, as I said, about 0.4 of a percentage point of GDP, and that's being diverted towards other things, right? Consumers are then able to spend that money on housing, on clothing for their kids for back to school, et cetera. And all of that's coming as a result of the shale story, which, as Brian knows, we're just starting to play out now. We have a long way to go on it. And I think that as we move forward throughout the decade, that 0.5% per year we were talking about through the next 5 years will most likely accelerate as we move forward. And while no economist likes to predict anything 10 years out because you're almost guaranteed of being wrong, I would just say that if it follows the same path that we saw the Internet follow, for example, 0.5% is probably the low-end estimate that you should put on these things.
In the Twitter age, don't predict anything 10 minutes out. That's my advice to you. Is there a downside to the shale gas boom?
Honestly, I don't see one. There are environmental concerns which are being addressed, but I think that if you look at the overall net positive impact on the U.S. economy, you just spent an entire segment talking about the Middle East. What if you didn't have to talk about the Middle East because it didn't really matter to U.S. energy demand? That kind of energy independence story, while we're a long way away from it, just means less volatility globally. If the U.S. doesn't have to be constrained by concerns about where our energy is going to come from in terms of our foreign policy and in terms of our ability to produce things and volatility around the economy, that's a net positive, not just for the United States, but I would argue for the world as a whole.
Not to be a downer, but I have found one potential negative, and I want to get your thoughts on it as well, because there was a piece in Forbes saying, a lot of these oil and gas companies have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on acreage and drilling, et cetera, to the point where they found so much gas, for example, last year that the gas price cratered, making some of these fields unprofitable. Is that a situation which is potentially going to be a problem going forward?
Well, they'll be unprofitable for a while, but obviously prices will adjust. Some of those people will back out of the market and realize they overspent. Some of them might even, the market will correct itself, and you'll get a price that will allow the right amount of investment to take place in order to meet U.S. demand. And I think, as time goes on, global demand for some of these energy products.
Drew, always a pleasure, buddy, to have you on the program. Thanks again.